My name is Victoria Williams and I'm 27 years old. 4 days ago, my mother picked up my engagement ring, held it toward the kitchen light, tilted her head slowly and let out this breath, not quite a laugh but definitely not a laugh, and said, "Well, sweetie. He did what he could." Then she turned toward my older sister without missing a beat. "Baby, why don't you show her yours again?" My fiancé was standing 6 feet away in the hallway, coat still on, still holding the bottle of wine he'd picked up on the way over. He heard every single word. What he did the next morning cost him $0. But what it cost my mother everything she had spent 30 years carefully building in Franklin, Tennessee, that started coming apart in about 72 hours flat. And I need you to understand, I did not plan any of this. I didn't walk into this with some master strategy. I was just a 27-year-old woman from a small town outside Nashville who was finally, for the first time in her life, too exhausted to keep performing. If you have ever sat in a car after a family dinner, both hands on the steering wheel, just breathing, talking yourself down from what just happened in there, this story is for you. Please stay with me. It's worth it. But before we get to what happened next, I need you to hit that subscribe button right now because this is the kind of story that stays with you, and I tell stories like this every single week. You don't want to miss the next one. Hit subscribe, then let's go. Here's what you need to know about my family because none of this lands right without the full picture. My mother, Diane Williams, is 54 years old. She grew up in a small town called Clover Falls, about 35 minutes outside of Nashville, Tennessee, right off Highway 96. She married my father young, moved to Franklin, one of those quiet, well-kept suburbs south of the city, and has never once let you forget that she considers herself to have married well. She doesn't say it cruelly. She doesn't have to. It's more like background music in the house. Always on. Always setting the mood. Whether you asked for it or not. My dad, Robert Williams, is 57. He spent his career managing a bank branch on Main Street in Franklin. Decent man, genuinely kind, but conflict avoidant in a way that borders on a superpower. His go-to move in any family argument is to offer everyone sweet tea and then quietly leave the room. I love him. I also spent 20 years wishing he would just once stay in the room. Then there's my older sister, Jenna. She's 31, married to Derek Callahan, a real estate attorney in Nashville with a corner office, a Brentwood zip code, and a parking spot with his name on it. Their wedding 4 years ago had 140 guests, a live band, and a venue in Green Hills that required a deposit most people use for a car down payment. Jenna's engagement ring is a 4-carat cushion-cut diamond. My mother brings it up at least once a month. Twice in November. 3 times in December. And then there's me. I'm a high school science teacher. I teach AP chemistry and regular chemistry at Clover Falls High School, right back in the same town where my mother grew up. I've tutored students before school at 6 in the morning because their families couldn't afford a private tutor. I've bought lab supplies out of my own paycheck more times than I want to count. I spent 2 summers working at a science camp in Hendersonville to chip away at student loans. I do all of this on a teacher's salary, and I am proud of that even when it sometimes feels like I have to fight to be. My mother has never once introduced me to her friends as a teacher. It's always, "This is Victoria." She's the one who always had to do things her own way. On the surface, that sounds like admiration. It isn't. It's code for the daughter who didn't land the Derek Callahan type. There's a photo wall in the hallway of my parents' house on Ridgecrest Drive. Framed photos of Jenna. Her high school graduation, her college graduation, her engagement shoot, the wedding, the honeymoon in the Amalfi Coast, 2 different Christmas portraits, and a maternity photo from last spring. There are 3 photos of me. 1 family portrait from when I was 9. 1 from my college graduation where I'm partially hidden behind my dad. And 1 of me at about 13, holding a blue ribbon from the county science fair. I know counting photos sounds like a small, sad thing to do. But here's the thing, when your mother counts everything, carat weights and square footage and salary ranges, you learn to count too. It's just the math of survival in a house like mine. Now, let me tell you about Marcus. I met my fiancé Marcus Webb 2.5 years ago at the Franklin Farmers Market on a Saturday morning in October. He had a booth set up selling handmade leather goods, wallets, belts, key fobs, a few small wooden keepsake boxes he'd made himself. His table was neat, everything laid out with care, the kind of booth that makes you slow down even if you weren't planning to stop. I knocked over his entire display trying to reach a jar of wildflower honey at the booth right next to his. Everything scattered, wallets across the pavement, a small cedar box split open at the hinge, key fobs rolling in 4 different directions. I was absolutely mortified. I started apologizing before I even got off my knees. He didn't look annoyed. Not even a little. He just laughed, this easy, warm, completely unbothered laugh, and got right down on the ground with me to help pick everything up. And while we were still crouched on the pavement, surrounded by scattered leather goods, he pressed a small bookmark into my hand. It was made from dark leather with a tiny pressed wildflower sealed under a resin window on the front. He said, "Consider it a peace offering. I still have that bookmark. It lives in my nightstand." That moment told me everything about who Marcus Webb is. He's 33. He owns a small leather and woodworking shop called Groundwork on Old Mill Road in Franklin, Tennessee. He makes custom goods by hand, furniture, leather accessories, home pieces, all by commission, all on his schedule. He is never going to be on a Forbes list, and he is absolutely fine with that. He measures a good week by the quality of the work he put out and the texts he gets from customers months later saying they still love the thing he made them. 6 weeks before all of this started, Marcus proposed on the back porch of his shop at sunset. He had built the ring box himself from a piece of reclaimed cedar, the kind that still smells like the forest it came from. Inside was a simple rose gold band with a small, deep green emerald at the center. Maybe 1/3 of a carat. But the color was something else. Like looking down into Still Creek water in the middle of a Tennessee forest on a still afternoon. I loved it right away and completely. Not because it was expensive. 'Cause it was clearly made with thought. Every single piece of it. When I called Jenna to share the news, the very first thing she asked was, "What's the stone?" I told her. She went quiet for just a beat too long. Then, "Oh, that's really unique. You know Mom is going to have thoughts, right?" I heard the warning in it. I chose not to take it seriously. 27 years of hoping that this time would be different, you'd think I would have learned by now. What I didn't know yet, what Marcus hadn't told me, was the full story behind that emerald. And that story? It was going to change every single thing that happened next. Thursday evening, my mother organized what she called a small, intimate dinner to celebrate at the house on Ridgecrest Drive. When Marcus and I pulled into the driveway, I noticed 2 cars parked along the curb that I didn't recognize. Inside, already settled on the good sofa with cocktails poured, were Patricia Hale and Susan Greer, Diane's country club friends. The women she lunches with every Tuesday at Hillcrest Country Club. Kind of women who can tell you the resale value of every neighborhood within 30 miles of Franklin without pausing to think. "I thought this was family only," I whispered to Marcus in the entryway. He squeezed my hand. "It's fine. I'm fine." The moment I walked into the dining room, my mother did not hug me. Did not say congratulations. Did not say let me look at you. She reached straight for my left hand, pulled my fingers toward the overhead light, and turned the ring slowly under the bulb. 3 full seconds of silence. Then that sound. Not quite a laugh, but definitely not a compliment. The sound someone makes when a waiter brings the wrong dish and they're too polished to make a scene but not polished enough to hide the disappointment. "Well," she said. "He did what he could." Patricia pressed her lips together. Susan studied the ice in her glass like it had personally offended her. And then Diane turned toward Jenna and Derek, who were standing over by the bookcase. "Baby, show her yours again, would you?" Jenna hesitated. I saw it happen, a flicker, something between guilt and reluctance, but her arm rose anyway, almost like it wasn't attached to her anymore, and the 4-carat diamond caught the dining room light and threw tiny rainbows across the ceiling. Diane smiled the way people smile when they've made their point without technically saying their point. I pulled my left hand under the table and went very still inside. That specific stillness, the one where you are 12 years old again in your body, trying hard not to cry in front of your mother's friends because crying would be making a scene. I know that stillness like I know my own name. What neither my mother nor I realized was that Marcus had come in through the side door. He had been standing just past the half wall between the kitchen and the dining room, jacket still in his hand. He had heard everything. When he walked into the room, a hush fell. Patricia set her glass down. Susan shifted in her seat. Robert suddenly became very interested in arranging the dinner rolls in the bread basket. Marcus didn't say a word. He walked to the empty chair next to mine, pulled it out and sat down. His hand moved to the small of my back. Steady, warm, one quiet point of contact that said I am right here without making a single sound. Diane recovered fast. She always does. Marcus. Oh, I didn't even hear you come in. The hostess switch flipped on, bright, smooth, completely practiced. Come sit, come sit. Oh, you already are. Perfect. She reached over and patted his hand like they'd been close for years. He let her. But he didn't return the gesture. He just looked at her, not with anger, not with some big dramatic expression, just the clear, level gaze of a man who had decided he was done pretending he hadn't heard what he'd heard. Dan's smile thinned just barely. She noticed. I know she did because she immediately changed the subject. So, Marcus. She turned toward Patricia. Tell them about your little shop. He does leather work, she said to Patricia. Isn't that creative? Custom leather and woodworking, Marcus said, even and clear. Right. Custom. She waved her hand, the kind of wave that says that detail doesn't really matter. Very hands-on stuff. The dinner moved the way Diane's dinners always move. Her at the center, everyone else in orbit. She had already booked a florist and found a champagne tower she liked on Pinterest for the engagement party she was planning, 90 guests at Hillcrest Country Club, sometime in March. I had not agreed to any of this. She had not asked. Across the table, Jenna caught my eye for about half a second. Something moved across her face, something close to understanding, and then she looked away. After dinner, Marcus and I headed out. He kept his hand on my shoulder the whole way to the truck. We drove back toward our apartment in Brentwood in near total silence. Marcus always drives with both hands on the wheel. Always. It's a craftsman thing. His hands are his livelihood, his whole world. That night he drove with one hand and held mine with the other, his thumb making slow, steady circles over my knuckles the whole way home. I watched the streetlights slide across his face. His jaw wasn't tight. His eyes weren't hard. He just had that look he gets when he's thinking something through carefully. Finally I said, I'm sorry about her. Don't apologize for her. That's how she's always been. She doesn't really mean. Victoria. His voice was gentle but it didn't bend. She asked Jenna to hold up her ring right after she laughed at yours. I started to say something. The reflex kicked in, the one I've had my whole life, the one that makes me soften it, explain it, sand down the edges until it seems like something I can live with. I know, I said instead. We got home to our apartment in Brentwood. He hung his jacket on the hook by the door and stood in the kitchen for a long time without saying anything. I sat on the couch with my shoes off, turning the ring slowly on my finger. Then he came and sat right next to me, knee to knee. Has she always been like this? For words asked plainly and directly. In 2.5 years of holidays and Sunday dinners and Diane's carefully positioned comments, Marcus had never once asked me that question out loud. Yes, I said. He nodded once. Looked at the ring. Looked at me. Okay. Then tomorrow morning I'm going to call her. I'm giving her a chance to make it right. I couldn't sleep that night. After Marcus went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table in the dark, just me and the hum of the refrigerator and the ring on my finger. I kept thinking about something I learned my first year of teaching, a concept we covered in a behavioral psychology unit called the sunk cost trap. The idea is this: we keep pouring ourselves into something not because it's working, but because we've already put so much in that stopping feels like admitting we wasted everything that came before. The brain flips it around. Instead of saying this isn't working, cut your losses, it says look how much you've already spent, you can't quit now. I explained it to my juniors using video games they'd sunk 60 hours into and movies they refused to walk out of because they'd already paid for the popcorn. Clean and simple on a whiteboard. It is a lot less clean when the sunk cost is 27 years of trying to be loved without conditions by your own mother. When every Thanksgiving is another deposit. Every Christmas another attempt. Every dinner another round of maybe this time will be different. I sat there at that kitchen table in Franklin, Tennessee at 2 a.m, turning an emerald ring on my finger and thought, I have spent 3 years telling teenagers to walk away from sunk costs. And I've been sitting in the middle of one my whole life. Morning came. Marcus made coffee and set a mug in front of me, then leaned against the counter with his arms crossed. Before I call her, he said, I want to ask you something first. Okay. If a student came to you before school and told you her mom said those things about her boyfriend, right in front of guests, what would you tell her? I looked at the steam rising off the mug. I knew the answer. I had said some version of it to kids who came to my classroom early, sitting on the edge of a lab stool, looking at the floor, telling me about homes where love had a price tag attached. I'd tell her that's not what real love looks like, I said. I'd tell her she deserves better. Marcus didn't nod. Didn't say there you go. He just held my eyes. I don't want our kids growing up thinking their worth gets measured by what someone puts on their finger, he said. Something broke loose in my chest right then and there. I cried, not from sadness, more from the relief of hearing someone say out loud the thing I had known for years and kept refusing to think all the way through. What are you going to say to her? I asked. The truth. And I'll give her a real chance to respond to it. 15 Friday morning. I sat on the couch with my coffee while Marcus made the call from the kitchen. No speaker. Our apartment is small, the kind of old Brentwood rental that wasn't built for privacy, and I could hear both sides of the conversation just fine. Good morning, Mrs. Williams. Do you have a few minutes to talk? Of course, sweetheart. Diane's voice came through warm and polished. That performance warmth she switches on like a light. What's on your mind? Last night, I heard what you said about the ring. A pause. 1 second. 2. I don't know what you think you heard, Marcus. You held it up and said he did what he could. Then you asked Jenna to show her ring right after. Honey, that was a joke. Toria has always been sensitive. You'll learn that about her. I had seen this move my entire life. The moment someone gets called on what they said, and instead of owning it, they pivot straight into talking about how hurt they are by being called on it. I have opened my home to you, Diane said, her voice climbing half an octave. I have welcomed you into this family with open arms. And this is how you repay that, calling me on a Friday morning to accuse me? I'm not accusing you. I'm telling you what I heard. If Victoria has a problem with me, she is perfectly capable of saying so herself. She has, Marcus said. For a long time. You just haven't heard her. Silence. 3 seconds. 4. 5. Click. She hung up. I want you to keep listening because what happened in the next 2 hours was actually more wild than the phone call itself. Don't go anywhere, and if you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now. Hit the bell too so you don't miss a single video. 'Cause this story is just getting started. Within an hour, my phone became a weapon fired at me from every angle. Jenna called first. Tori, Mom is upset. You know how she gets. Can't Marcus just call back and fix it? Then my dad texted, Sweetie, everyone's feelings are running high. If all parties apologized a little, we could put this behind us. All parties. As if multiple people had done something equally wrong. as if the offense was shared evenly. That's Robert Williams's signature move, split the blame 50-50 no matter which side is holding all of it, just to buy himself some quiet. And then, the one that honestly surprised me the most, a text from Patricia Hale, my mother's country club friend. The woman who had been sitting on the couch in my parents' living room less than 12 hours earlier. Victoria, honey, your mama has worked so hard on this party for you. Please don't let a little misunderstanding ruin something beautiful. I stared at that text for a long time. My mother had called her friends before she called her own husband. She had already assembled her side, framed her version of the story, and deployed people to reach me, all inside of 60 minutes. That is not a hurt mother. That is a campaign. When Diane finally called me directly, I braced for tears. What I got was a command. You need to get your fiancé under control before he destroys this family. Mom, he called to talk to you. You hung up on him. He attacked me, Victoria. On a Friday morning. In my own home. He repeated back what you said. I am your mother. Her voice dropped into that low, flat register, the one that has always been meant to end arguments by sheer force. I should not have to explain myself to a man who makes wallets for a living. The way she said wallets. Like it was a slur. Mom, you laughed at my ring in front of your friends. I was surprised. That is different from laughing. I want good things for you. Is that a crime? This is the cycle. She says the thing. You react to it. She reframes what she said as an act of love and concern, and suddenly you're the one apologizing for being hurt. I had ridden this carousel so many times I could do it blindfolded. Not today. Marcus gave you the chance to own what you said, I told her. You hung up instead. A long pause. If Marcus does not apologize to me by Saturday, the engagement party is cancelled. I never asked you to plan that party. 90 people are already invited, Victoria. Her voice went cold and flat like winter pavement. You will not humiliate me. I hung up. My hands were shaking, and not from fear. I have stood in front of 30 teenagers at 7:30 in the morning and taught quantum mechanics. Fear is not my issue. This was something else. Something I had never quite felt before in the context of my mother. For the first time in 27 years, I was not just hurt. I was not just disappointed. I was not resigned. I was genuinely, completely, and clearly angry. And for once in my life, I did not push it back down. That Saturday afternoon, Marcus and I sat at the kitchen table, the solid white pine one he built the first summer we lived together in our Brentwood apartment, and we made a decision. Marcus would write an email, addressed to Diane, copied to Robert, Jenna, and Derek. For things in that email. First, a clear and exact account of what happened at Thursday's dinner. Her words, the laugh, the comparison. No exaggeration, no extra spin, just what happened. Second, the full story of the emerald. The story Marcus hadn't even told me yet when all of this started, but that I was about to hear, and that I knew the moment he told me needed to be in that email. Third, we would not be attending the engagement party at Hillcrest Country Club. Fourth, our wedding would be planned by us and paid for by us. Diane was welcome to attend as a guest. Not as the organizer, not as the host, not as the person in charge. As a guest. No name-calling. No threats. Just the facts laid out plainly, the way you document something for the record at work. I read the draft 3 times, looking hard for the part where it crossed a line. There wasn't one. But there was one paragraph that stopped me cold and made me set the paper down for a second. The emerald in Victoria's ring belonged to my grandmother, Loretta Webb. She wore it every single day for 38 years. Her husband, Calvin, my grandfather, a leather worker and craftsman just like me, chose it because he said it was the color of the woods behind the house where they spent their first summer together. Loretta passed when I was 17. I have kept that stone since the day she was buried. It is the most valuable thing I own, not in dollars but in everything that actually matters. I looked up at Marcus. He looked at me. Send it, I said. He hit the button at 11:22 Saturday morning, Franklin, Tennessee time. While we waited on the front steps for the fallout to start, Marcus told me the whole story. The one he'd been carrying since he was 17 years old. Loretta Webb married Calvin Webb in the summer of 1966 in a small church ceremony outside Gallatin, Tennessee, about 40 minutes northeast of Nashville. 6 guests. No photographer. Calvin worked leather and built furniture for a living. Same craft, same hands, 3 generations before Marcus. He didn't have much money that year. What he had was a pay envelope, a jeweler on the main road in Gallatin, and a very specific idea. Why an emerald? The jeweler asked. Because it's the color of the woods where we walked the morning I knew I was in love with her, Calvin said. Loretta wore the emerald on a chain around her neck every single day for 38 years. Through 4 kids, a shop fire in 1979 that wiped them out completely, a rebuilt business, and a husband who came home every night smelling like leather and sawdust until the day he died. When Loretta passed, Marcus was 17 years old. She left him 2 things, her leatherworking tools and the emerald on its chain. He'd kept the stone in a small tin box in his workbench drawer for 10 years. Every new shop he opened, every table he built, every commission he delivered, it was there in that drawer. Waiting. When he decided to propose, he drove to a jeweler 2 towns over in Murfreesboro and had the stone set into a rose gold band he'd sketched out himself on graph paper. Your mother looked at that ring, Marcus said quietly, staring out at Old Mill Road, and saw a price point. He was quiet for a moment. My grandmother looked at it every day for 38 years and saw the morning she fell in love. I sat with that. Diane Williams hadn't just been rude about a piece of jewelry. She had laughed at a dead woman's love story. 38 years of a marriage that lasted. At a man who made his choice based on meaning and never lost a night's sleep about the price tag. And now, because of that email sitting in 4 inboxes in Franklin and Nashville, Tennessee, every person in my family knew it. The responses started coming in fast. And here's where things got interesting in ways I did not see coming, so stay with me because this part matters. Jenna called first. I expected the usual speech about damage control and keeping the peace. What I got was something completely different. Her voice was quieter than usual. Slower. Something was running underneath it. Derek read the email, she said. He has not said a single word all morning. Victoria, Derek always has something to say. I waited. Do you remember Thanksgiving 2 years ago? She asked. And then she told me something she had never once said out loud before. Something about Marcus's email had cracked a door open inside her. Jenna and Derek's 5th anniversary dinner last spring, at a nice restaurant in Nashville's Green Hills neighborhood, Diane had pulled Derek aside in the lobby while Jenna was in the restroom. She told him, calm and casual, that she thought Jenna could have done better for herself financially. That she hoped he would step things up over the next few years. Derek had not told Jenna about that conversation for 6 months. When he finally did, she asked him not to say anything to Diane. She asked him to swallow it, to keep the peace. He's been doing that for 4 years, Jenna said. And then she said the thing that split me open. I thought I was the favorite Tory. I thought being chosen meant being safe. But I wasn't the favorite. I was just the one who stayed quiet. And that is not the same thing. 27 years I spent feeling like the lesser daughter. The backup plan. The independent one, said in that tone. And here was Jenna telling me that being on the right side of our mother's scoreboard hadn't been a prize. It had been a cage with nicer furniture. Robert called Sunday afternoon. Every other call that weekend had been some version of please just make this easier for everyone, which in the Williams family has always meant make it easier for Diane. But something told me to pick up. Hey, Dad. I read the email. His voice was tired in a way I hadn't heard before. Not angry tired. Older tired. Kind that builds up over decades. Dad, Don't apologize, Victoria. I stopped breathing for a second. In 27 years and hundreds of phone calls with my father, I had never once heard Robert Williams say don't apologize. His whole system ran on let's calm down and your mother means well and it'll blow over in a few days. An actual don't apologize was not in his vocabulary. I just need to ask you one thing, he said. Did she really say that? Those exact words, he did what he could. Yes, Dad. 8 full seconds of silence. I counted them. I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway of the house on Ridgecrest Drive, the one Diane picked out, the one Robert winds every Sunday morning without being asked. I need to think, he said. Then he hung up. Not I'll talk to your mother about it. Not let's give everybody time to cool down. Not it'll be fine by next weekend. I need to think. From a man who had not independently worked through a family problem in 30 years, those 4 words hit me harder than anything else said that entire week. By Wednesday, 5 days after the email, 3 days before the scheduled party, Diane made her next move. She dropped a message into the family group chat. And when I opened it, I noticed she had added Patricia Hale and Susan Greer to the thread. Her country club friends. In the family group chat. That single detail told me everything about who the performance was actually for. Engagement celebration for Victoria and Marcus is still on for Saturday evening at Hillcrest Country Club. There's been a small miscommunication this week, but this family always comes together. Can't wait to celebrate these two. No mention that I had told her flat out we weren't coming. No mention of the email. No mention of any of it. She was betting that I would fold. She was counting on the weight of 90 invited guests to make it too socially costly for me to say no. Show up and go along with it, or stay home and be the ungrateful daughter who blew up her own engagement party. Marcus read it over my shoulder. She's using the crowd, he said quietly. If you don't show, she spends the next 6 months telling everyone you ruined it. That was the trap exactly. Called Jenna. Did you see the text? Yeah. A pause. She told me everything was resolved between you two. Nothing is resolved, Jenna. I told her we weren't coming. Longer pause. She said you apologized. I let that sit on the line between us for a moment. Let Jenna hear the weight of what she'd just passed along without checking. She lied, I said. Quiet exhale. I didn't know. I know you didn't. So what are you going to do? I looked at Marcus across the room. He wasn't deciding for me. He was just standing there, steady, waiting. We're going, I said. Not to play along. But if she behaves, we behave. And if she doesn't, I'm done performing. Saturday. Day of the party. I put on a simple navy wrap dress. No earrings. No necklace. No extra jewelry. Just the emerald ring right where anyone who looked would see it. Marcus wore a dark gray button-down and dark slacks he'd pressed himself. When he rolled his sleeves up to the elbow, I could see the small, faded marks along his forearms, tiny nicks from years of working with leather and wood. A whole life of honest work written on his skin. We didn't talk much on the drive over to Hillcrest. The plan was straightforward. Show up, be present, be gracious. The email had already said everything that needed saying. This wasn't about picking a fight. The last red light before the country club, Marcus reached over and took my hand. We are not going there to win, he said. We're going so we don't have to hide. The Hillcrest parking lot was almost completely full. Through the glass front doors I could see white flowers on every table, a champagne display along the far wall, and a banner stretched across the back that read, "Congratulations, Victoria and Marcus," and underneath it, in slightly smaller lettering, "Hosted by Diane and Robert Williams." Her name was first. Course it was. Diane met us at the entrance like a diplomat receiving foreign guests at the border. She pulled me into a hug that lasted 2 beats longer than a real hug lasts, the kind built for an audience, not for me. Over her shoulder I could see Patricia and Susan already watching from the nearest table, wine glasses going. "You look absolutely beautiful, sweetheart," she whispered against my ear. Then lower, just for me, smile. "Please. Do not ruin this night." She released me and turned on Marcus with her full hostess brightness. "Marcus. So glad you made it. Come in, come in." For the next 30 minutes, Diane worked the room, steering every introduction. Every single time, Marcus got the same presentation. "This is Marcus, Victoria's fiancé. He does leather work and woodworking. Isn't that creative? Creative. That word. That exact tone. 8 times in half an hour. Each time with the same slight uplift, the way adults compliment a child's drawing in front of the child. Technically a compliment, but dripping with a "isn't that cute" energy underneath. When anyone asked to see the ring, Diane stepped forward before I could even lift my hand. "It's an emerald," she would say. "Very unique. Not traditional, but that is perfectly fine." Perfectly fine. 2 words that have never once in human history actually meant fine. Marcus found my hand under the table and held it. Jenna was sitting 2 tables over with Derek. She was watching our mother move through the room with an expression I had never seen on her face before. Not the relaxed look of a daughter who knows she's the favorite. Something more like a person sitting in a theater watching a show they've seen 100 times, finally reading the playbill and realizing what it actually is. Derek sat next to her with his jaw set tight, staring past the centerpiece. My dad stood near the back of the room holding a club soda he never touched. 7:30, Diane stepped up to the microphone. The room went quiet. She stood at the podium in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent on Brentwood Drive. Hair perfect. Lipstick perfect. She held the microphone the way she holds everything she considers hers, with the easy confidence of ownership. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight to celebrate my youngest daughter's engagement." Warm applause all around. When Victoria first told me she was getting married, I was, a deliberate pause, a small tilt of the head, surprised. A ripple of polite laughter from the crowd. But love takes all kinds of shapes. Her gaze dropped for just a moment to my left hand on the table. And all kinds of budgets. A few laughs. A man in the back stopped mid-chuckle when his wife's hand landed on his arm. Diane pressed forward, smooth as silk. I raised my girls to reach for the best. Jenna found a man who moved mountains for her. She gestured toward Jenna and Derek. Derek did not move a muscle. Victoria found someone who builds beautiful things with his hands. A small smile settled on her face. And honestly, there is a certain charm in that. The room had gone the wrong kind of quiet. Not respectful quiet. Comfortable quiet. She raised her glass. "To Victoria and Marcus, may you build something that lasts." A few glasses went up. Most of the room hesitated. Jenna's hand froze halfway. Derek's glass stayed on the tablecloth. I looked at Marcus. His face was completely still. He found my eyes and gave one small, slow nod. Not permission. Something quieter than that. "I see you. You already know what to do." I set my glass down. I pushed my chair back. I stood up. 85 people looked at me all at once. The chandelier overhead hummed. Somewhere behind me a fork clinked against a plate. Then the room went silent. "Thank you, Mom." My voice held steady. 3 years of standing in front of rooms full of teenagers who can smell uncertainty like a dog smells fear will do that for you. "I'd like to add something, if that's all right." Diane's smile locked in place. She couldn't object, not in front of 85 guests. She stepped back from the podium with a gracious little nod that didn't come close to her eyes. I didn't take the microphone. The room was quiet enough and small enough that I didn't need it. The emerald in this ring belonged to Loretta Webb. I raised my left hand. The stone caught the light, not the way a diamond catches it, scattering sparks everywhere, but in a single, deep, steady glow. like sunlight hitting still forest water. She wore it every day for 38 years. A murmur moved through the room. People leaned forward. Her husband Calvin, Marcus's grandfather, was a craftsman. He chose this stone because it was the color of the woods where he walked with Loretta the morning he knew he was in love with her. He had it set for her on a chain, and she wore it until the day she died. I looked at Marcus. He was watching me with the kind of look you spend a whole life hoping someone will give you. I know this ring isn't 4 carats. I didn't look at Jenna. I didn't need to. But it holds 38 years of a marriage that held, and I would not trade it for a single thing in this room. The silence after that was completely different from the silence after Diane's toast. This one had weight, the real kind. Kind that means something true just landed. From the back of the room, a woman stood up. Gloria Hines, 73 years old, Hillcrest board member for longer than I'd been alive. She raised her glass. To Victoria and Marcus, she said. And to Loretta. 50 glasses went up. Then 70. Then the whole room. Diane raised hers last. Her hand was not entirely steady. If you are still watching, first of all, thank you. And second of all, hit that like button right now, because the best part of this story is what happened after the party. And I promise you it is worth every second. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Drop a comment and tell me where in the country you're watching from. I read every single one. Now, here's what happened after. Party broke up fast, the way events break up when something real has happened in the middle of them. People filed out in small groups. Women I barely knew squeezed my arm on the way out and said things like, "That was just beautiful, honey, and you hold on to that man." Susan Greer, who had been at the Thursday dinner where this whole thing started, stopped right in front of me on her way out, took both my hands in hers and said, "Loretta sounds like she was something truly special." She said it to me. Not to Diane, who was standing less than 5 feet away. That tiny geography said the whole thing. Once the room cleared, Diane found me in the hallway near the coat check. Polished hostess version of her was completely gone. Just her face, tight, stripped, furious. "Are you satisfied with yourself? You just humiliated me in front of every person I know." "Mom, I did not say a single word about you. I talked about the ring. Everyone in that room understood exactly what you were doing." "Then maybe," I said, "what you said was worse than you thought." Her mouth opened and closed twice. "Your father is going to hear about this. Dad read the email on Tuesday, Mom. He's known about this for 4 days." Something shifted behind her eyes. Calculation falling apart. She had assumed Robert had already sided with her the way he always did, quietly, without discussion. She hadn't known he'd been sitting with the truth of it for days without acting like everything was fine. Before she could say anything else, Robert appeared in the hallway doorway. He looked at her with the look of a man who has driven the same road 1,000 times and is finally, right now, seeing it clearly. "Diane," he said, quiet and level. "We need to talk when we get home. Not everything's going to be okay. Not let's all take a breath. Just that." Diane looked at him for a long moment. Then she picked up her coat and walked to the car without a single word. That same night, Jenna called me at 10 o'clock. Her voice was nothing like the composed, managed voice I'd grown up hearing. It was small, a little cracked around the edges. "Derek wants to meet Marcus," she said. "Yeah. He wants to sit down with the only person in this family who said it out loud." A breath. "Tori, after Mom's toast tonight, after you stood up, Derek reached over and took my hand under the table. And he said to me, 'I need you to know that what your mother said to me last spring wasn't okay, and I should have told you sooner.' We sat in the car in the Hillcrest parking lot and talked for 2 hours before we even went inside. I was quiet. Jenna." "Yeah. I kept a text you sent me 2 years ago. The one about Mom and the anniversary dinner comment about Derek. I deleted that." "I know. I didn't. A long, full silence. I really thought I was safe, she said. I thought being the favorite meant something. But I wasn't the favorite, Tori. I was just the most obedient. And those are two completely different things. 27 years I spent feeling like the lesser daughter. And here was Jenna telling me that being the chosen one in Diane Williams's world wasn't a prize. It was just a fancier version of the same cage. You're still my sister, I told her. That is not going anywhere. She cried for a bit. I stayed on the line with her until she was okay. The following week, Marcus and Derek met up at Palmetto's Bar and Grill out on Route 7 just south of Franklin. I wasn't there. I only know what happened because Marcus came home at midnight and sat on the tailgate of his truck in our parking lot, smiling in a way I hadn't seen on him before, like he'd found something he didn't know he'd been missing. They talked for nearly 3 hours. Derek told him about the anniversary dinner, about the years of small cuts that never quite healed because Jenna always asked him to let it go, about swallowing his own dignity over and over in exchange for family peace and calling it love. That's not weakness, Marcus told him. That's what happens when you love someone and they keep asking you to hold still while it hurts. They didn't toast to revenge or victory. They clinked glasses to the simpler, quieter thing. The decision to stop calling silence the same thing as peace. 10 days after the engagement party, things started moving in Diane's social world in Franklin. She stepped back quietly from the fall fundraiser committee at Hillcrest Country Club. The official reason given was that she needed personal time. The real reason filtered back through Jenna, who heard it from Derek, who heard it from a colleague whose wife sat on the Hillcrest board. Gloria Hines had pulled Diane aside at Tuesday lunch and told her, gently but clearly, that it might be a good season for her to take a step back. In that world, in that circle of Franklin's country club set, that is not a friendly suggestion. That is a verdict. Trisha Hale, 15 years of Thursday lunches together on the books, went quiet. Diane invited her to brunch twice. Trisha was busy both times. The kind of busy that means I'm not ready to have that lunch yet. Nobody called Diane a bad person. Nobody aired it publicly or made noise about it. That's not how things work in a place like Franklin's country club community. It works through absences. The empty seat. The invitation that doesn't come. The voicemail that goes unreturned for a week, then 2. Death by 1,000 quiet omissions. Robert, meanwhile, did something I had never once seen in 30 years of watching him operate. He set a condition. He told Diane she needed to see a therapist on her own, not couples counseling, not someone they both went to, before he was ready to go back to things the way they'd been. Individual therapy, individual work. She said yes. I honestly don't know if that yes was genuine or strategic. Diane Williams has spent a lifetime saying yes to things in order to get back what she'd lost. But the fact that she didn't storm out, didn't cry, didn't call it an attack on her character, that told me something real had shifted, even if I couldn't fully see the shape of it yet. 3 weeks after the party, I stopped by the house on Ridgecrest Drive on a Tuesday afternoon to pick up a box of old family photos I wanted for a memory display at the wedding. Robert answered the door. His eyes were red at the edges, not fresh, the kind that comes from several nights of not quite sleeping. He handed me the photo box from the hall closet. Then he stood in the doorway looking at me the way someone looks when they've been rehearsing something and aren't certain they have the nerve for it. Victoria. Yeah, Dad. I'm sorry. I blinked. Genuinely blinked. Robert Williams does not apologize. Robert Williams says let's move forward and your mother means well and give it a few days. An apology from Robert Williams, direct and plain with no cushioning around it, was something I had never once heard in my life. For what? I asked. For 30 years of knowing, he said. A long pause. And telling you it was fine. I set the photo box down on the porch step and hugged him. He held on for a long time. Long enough that I felt his shoulders shake once, just once, and then go completely still. I told her she needs to call both of you girls, he said. A real conversation. No conditions, no qualifications, no I'm sorry you felt that way. The real one. What did she say? She went upstairs. That was 2 days ago. I looked up at the second-floor window of the house on Ridgecrest Drive. The blinds were closed. I couldn't tell if she was falling apart or regrouping. With Diane Williams, it has always been possible to be doing both at the same time. A month after the engagement party, my phone rang during fourth period prep at Clover Falls High School. Diane. I stepped out into the hallway and answered. Her voice was different. Slower. More careful with every word, like someone who has been practicing and isn't sure the words are quite right yet. Victoria. I've been doing a lot of thinking. I want to see you and Marcus, both of you together. Can we talk? Yes, I said. I'll pick the place. A pause. Okay. We met at Birchwood Coffee on Clement Avenue in Franklin. Mismatched chairs, real ceramic mugs, the smell of something sweet baking in the back. I picked it specifically because it was nowhere near Diane's regular circuit. She was already there when we arrived. Seated at a corner table, hands around a mug of tea. No makeup on, just her actual face, her hair pulled back in a simple clip, a gray cardigan. I had never once seen my mother in public without her makeup. Stopped me for just a second in the doorway. We sat. Marcus ordered black coffee. I ordered nothing, I needed my hands free. Diane spoke first. I'm sorry for the way I made you feel. There it was. The way I made you feel. Not for what I said. Not for what I did. For the feelings you had in response to it. Marcus leaned forward. Mrs. Williams, can you tell me specifically what you're sorry for? She blinked. The misunderstanding. There wasn't a misunderstanding, he said, perfectly calm, no heat in it at all. You said the ring wasn't good enough. You compared it to your son-in-law's ring. You did it in front of your friends. Diane's mouth opened. Closed. I reached across the table, not to comfort her but to finish the thought. Mom, I'm sorry you were hurt is not the same thing as I'm sorry I hurt you. She looked at me. And then something happened that I genuinely did not see coming. Diane Williams looked down at her tea mug and said in the smallest voice I had ever heard from her, When your father proposed to me, my mother held the ring up and said, well, at least he got you something real. The whole table went completely still. That was the only nice thing my mother ever said about your father. The only one. She measured everything he did, the house, the car, what he made at the bank, how he dressed for Christmas dinner. Every single thing. And she always found him coming up short. Her voice was barely above a whisper. And I hated her for it. I told myself I would never do that to my own children. She pressed her fingers flat against the table edge. But the ring was the one thing my mother approved of. The one thing she didn't tear apart. And I held on to that, the idea that a certain kind of ring meant you'd done something right, that you'd landed somewhere safe. I held on to that idea for 30 years. Her eyes came up to mine. I didn't even see that I'd turned into her. Coffee shop kept moving around us. Someone laughed at the counter. A little kid in a booth nearby knocked a spoon onto the floor. Marcus spoke first. I'm really sorry about your mother, Mrs. Williams. She looked at him, really looked at him, probably for the actual first time since the day they met. You're more generous than I deserved, she said. I reached over and held her hand. Mom, I understand why you think the way you think. But I am not my grandmother's daughter. I am yours. And Marcus is nothing like the man she spent her life measuring. She nodded. No pivot. No defense. I need time, she said. That was honest. And at Birchwood Coffee in Franklin, Tennessee, on that particular morning, honest was exactly enough. Before we left, I said what I had come to say. No tears, no raised voice. The way I talk to a student who deserves to hear something hard said clearly and with respect. Mom, Here's how things are going to work going forward. She looked up. The wedding is Marcus's and mine. We plan it, we pay for it. You are invited as a guest, and I genuinely want you there. But you are not the organizer. You don't pick the venue. You don't choose the flowers. You don't manage the guest list. She stayed quiet and let me finish. Second, the comparisons stop. No more measuring Marcus against Derek. No more ranking gifts or incomes or ring sizes. If it happens even once, I will leave the room. Not with a scene, just quietly. And we can talk about it later. But I will leave. Marcus laid his hand open on the table. I placed mine on top of it. Third, and this one is for me more than for you. If Marcus and I have children someday, they will never once hear their grandmother tell them their parents aren't enough. That is not a request. The air at that corner table in Birchwood held still for a moment. Diane looked at our hands on the table. Then at the emerald catching the morning light through the window. I love you, Mom, I said. But I will not accept love that comes with a scorecard attached to it. She pressed her lips together, not the controlled, thin-line press I'd seen 1,000 times before. Something different. The look of someone holding something fragile, trying with everything they have not to drop it. Okay, she said. Marcus looked at her. We want you there, Mrs. Williams. We just want the day to be about Victoria and me. She nodded. Then she looked at the ring one more time and said quietly, almost to herself, that really is a beautiful color. Not a speech. Not a grand gesture. Not a tearful apology with music behind it. But from Diane Williams it was the first honest step. Our venue was the yard behind Marcus's shop Groundwork on Old Mill Road in Franklin, Tennessee. We decided on it on a Tuesday evening in late April. We were standing in the grass at dusk when Marcus looked around at the open space, the old hickory tree in the corner, the wide double doors of the shop propped open, sawdust still floating in the last of the evening light, and said, "What about right here?" "How many people?" I asked. 45. That's half what Mom invited to the engagement party. He smiled. It's also 3 times as many as Loretta and Calvin had. We planned the whole thing ourselves. Marcus built the tables from reclaimed oak, long, wide communal boards, no head table, no hierarchy of seating. I made the centerpieces from wildflowers I pressed and dried over the spring. We used the same string lights Marcus had put up for the proposal, strung between the hickory tree and the shop's roof beam. Jenna called the following week. "Can I be your maid of honor?" "You were always going to be," I said. Robert texted 3 days after that. "Would your old dad still get to walk you down the aisle?" "There is nobody else I'd want for that job," I wrote back. And then the message I absolutely did not expect. From Diane. No phone call, no build-up. Just a simple text. "Is there anything I can help with for the wedding? I'm here if you need me." No suggestions hidden inside it. No opinions dressed up as offers. No, I know a florist, or have you thought about the country club for the rehearsal dinner? Just an offer. Question. With no strings I could see. From literally anyone else on earth, that text would have been unremarkable. From Diane Williams, it was a revolution. I wrote back, "You could bring your pasta. The red sauce. The one you made on Fridays when we were little." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Came back. Okay. Just that. No, are you sure a home-cooked dish is appropriate for a wedding? No, I could have a caterer do something similar. Just okay. I saved that text. I am going to keep it forever. Let me be straight with you for a minute. Real straight. I do not tell this story to show anyone the right way to handle a difficult family situation. Every family is its own world. Every mother is different. Every breaking point is different, and I have no idea what yours looks like. But I know one thing for certain, because I lived inside it for 27 years in a small town outside Nashville, and I am only now beginning to fully understand it. Silence is not peace. Silence is permission. Every time I laughed off one of Diane's comments at dinner, every time I made excuses for her on the drive home, every time I told Marcus that's just how she is, I was not keeping the peace. I was keeping her comfortable. And the cost of her comfort was my dignity. Marcus did not save me. I need to be clear about that. He did not come riding in and remove the problem. He asked me a single question. If a student told you her mom said those things about her boyfriend, what would you tell her? And I answered it honestly for maybe the first time in my life. He held the mirror up. I did the looking. 3 months after the engagement party at Hillcrest, here is where things actually stand. Diane has been seeing a therapist named Dr. Aldridge in Franklin for 6 weeks. She has not become a different person, and anyone who tells you that 6 weeks of therapy fixes 30 years of deeply learned behavior is selling you something. But twice in the past month she started to say something mid-sentence and caught herself. Stopped. Redirected. Small. Visible. And for right now enough. Robert tells stories at dinner now. At the dinners Marcus and I have started hosting at our place in Brentwood, around the table Marcus built, Robert talks about projects he worked on at the bank, about his college road trip that ended with a blowout tire on a cattle ranch in West Texas, about the time he accidentally ordered 3 times the materials for a home renovation and had to return them in a rented truck in a rainstorm. He laughs at his own stories. Diane listens. Sometimes she asks what happened next. Jenna and I talk every few days now, not to manage a crisis, just to talk. She told me last week that Derek finally said to Diane directly in front of Jenna, "The thing you said at our anniversary dinner last year hurt me." And Diane looked at him and said, "You're right. I should not have said that. I'm sorry." 7 words. No qualifiers. No "I'm sorry you felt that way." Just a real one. Derek told Jenna it was the first time in 4 years he felt like Diane had actually seen him as a person. Jenna also told me, casually, like it wasn't the biggest thing she'd said to me in our whole lives, that she thinks of me as her best friend. I didn't make a big deal of it out loud. I replayed it in my head 4 times before I fell asleep. The wedding is in September, in the yard behind groundwork on Old Mill Road in Franklin, Tennessee. 45 guests. String lights between the hickory tree and the shop's roof beam. Long oak tables with no head seat. Wildflower centerpieces I made myself. Jenna standing next to me. My dad walking me through the grass, toward the man who asked me one simple question and waited patiently while I finally answered it honestly. And Diane's red sauce on the table. I want you to picture something because I think about it often. Loretta Webb wore the emerald every single day for 38 years. Through job losses and a shop fire in Gallatin, Tennessee, and the slow, ordinary, beautiful hard work of building a life with somebody. She didn't wear it because it was the most expensive thing she owned. She wore it because every single time she looked at it, she saw the Tennessee woods. She saw the morning that started everything. She saw a man who paid attention to what actually mattered to her. That stone sat in a tin box inside a workbench drawer for 10 years, waiting. I think about the patience of that. Something precious and real, held quietly in the dark, waiting for the right moment and the right person. That is not a small thing. That is everything. Every morning before school, I look at the emerald on my hand. Color shifts with the light. First thing in the morning, it is deep and still, like looking into shade. Midday, it catches the sun and glows from the inside out. At the end of the day, by the lamp in our Brentwood apartment, it goes the color of the last sky before dark. I notice something new in it every single day. Last Sunday at dinner, Diane looked at my hand while we were clearing dishes. She didn't compare it. She didn't rank it. She didn't place it on any kind of scale. She just paused and said, "That color really does suit you." Not an apology. Not a grand declaration. Just true. And from Diane Williams, true is brand new territory. If you are still here, and I really hope you are, here is what I want to leave you with. Maybe you are watching this because someone in your life keeps score. Maybe it is your mother, your father, your sister, your in-laws. Maybe someone measures the love they give you in dollar amounts and zip codes and carat weights and whether your life matches the picture they had in their head for you. Maybe you have spent years trying to hit a number that keeps moving. I know exactly what that feels like. I lived inside it for 27 years in Franklin, Tennessee. I smiled through it. I drove home from holiday dinners gripping the steering wheel and telling myself next time is going to be different. It never was. 'Cause I was the one showing up to the same game with the same rules every time, genuinely expecting a different score. The thing that changed was not my mother. It was not the email or the toast or the party. The thing that changed was me. I stopped accepting pieces of love that I had to purchase with my self-respect. I stopped treating silence like it was the same thing as peace. And I stopped waiting for someone else to say out loud the thing I had known for years and kept refusing to think all the way through. Peace that costs your dignity is not peace. It is a payment plan for someone else's comfort. If you are in that place right now, if you are somewhere counting pictures on a wall, measuring the distance between who you are and who your family needs you to be, please hear this one thing. You do not owe anyone your silence. You are worth more than any ring. My name is Victoria Williams. I am a high school chemistry teacher from Clover Falls, Tennessee. I am marrying a craftsman this September in a workshop yard in Franklin under string lights with my sister beside me and my father walking me through the grass. And on my hand, a small green emerald the color of the Tennessee woods where two people walked the morning they fell in love. 38 years of love. 0 carats. Worth everything. This story connected with you. If it reminded you of someone who needed to hear it, please share it with them right now. Text it, post it, send it to that one person in your life who you know needs these words today. Sometimes the thing that changes us comes from a stranger's story on a screen at midnight, and that is okay. That counts. If you have ever drawn a line with your family, if you have ever looked someone in the eye and said this is where it stops, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you are new here and you are not subscribed yet, please do it right now. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. I share stories like this every week. Real families, real moments, real people who finally stopped performing and started living. You do not want to miss what comes next. I am Victoria. Thank you so much for staying with me.